Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or even good night. It's the 21st of September. It's Darren from Grills Plants, and we're in the potting shed. It's a potting shed day today. Today we are repotting. I know them as Granny's bonnet. You may know them as Aquilegia. So, all these little seeds you can see here, I mean, they've accumulated together a bit. It's no problem, we can split them up a bit. But all these seeds came from a seed pod, or two, or three, or maybe actually about 10 seed pods from a plant that was in our garden. So it came from a granny's bonnet that was in our garden. And we saved those seeds in June. We dried them in the greenhouse in a clear tray for a month, and then we sowed them on the 4th of July. 4th of July rings a bell somewhere in the US, doesn't it? So 4th of July we sowed these, and from seed pods we'd saved from our own Aquilegia Granny's bonnet. So today these are now big enough, as you can see, that we're going to repot them. So when we sowed these, we surface sowed them, and we just pressed the seeds in to make contact with the compost. But what you don't do with Aquilegia is you don't cover the seeds. They need daylight to germinate. And don't think about putting them in a greenhouse. Just put them in somewhere in maybe a cooler environment. Not a fridge, obviously, but in a cooler environment, part shade. We put them in to start them off. Once we get all the baby leaves up, then we bring them out and we put them into the sunlight a bit more, so there's a bit more sun on them. And then, as you can see, from the 4th of July to the 21st of September, we now have many plants from seed pods from our own gardens. I find with Aquilegia or Granny's bonnet, I find that actually I get more success from seeds that I save myself than the ones that actually you buy in a packet on the internet or in a shop. And I think Aquilegia is one of those plants. Astrantia is another one, where if the seeds are at their freshest, then you're going to get more germination. That's not always the case with all plants, but I find with Aquilegia, Granny's bonnet, and also Astrantia especially, you'll get better success with germination from your own seeds when you've got fresh seeds from, a month-old seeds. So let's do some repotting. Now, I buy my compost. It's just a raw compost. It's not a ready-made compost. It's just a raw compost, which is made here in Cornwall, where I live. So it's made on a farm, so it's all locally. So because of that, what I'm going to do is to actually help these little seedlings establish roots and give good water drainage. I'm going to add some of these. This is just sort of grit and sand. So I'm going to literally mix in. That's maybe about 25 litres of compost. I'm going to do about 2.5 of this plant pot and then mix it. Then we give it a good mix. This will take about 3-4 minutes to get a good mix, and then I'll be ready to pot. So there we are. You can see it's sort of evenly through the compost now. So I've got my little pot. Hasn't got to be too big a pot. I'm going to 3/4 fill that, and then I'm going to put my little secret ingredient. This is not essential. You don't have to do this. So I use a thing called seaweed meal, which is basically ground down dried seaweed. The one I use is an organic seaweed meal. Here it is. This is what it looks like. Very fine ground up seaweed. It smells of seaweed when you feel it. So I'm just going to take a little pinch like that, and I'm just going to sprinkle that in the bottom of the pot. Well, the bottom of where the soil level is now, should I say. Give it a tap, and then I'm going to top it up. And then I'll tell you why I use seaweed meal. Now, because we buy our compost straight from a farm, which they make in a big biodigester, you know, there's no sort of feed in this compost at all. So that's why we're adding the grit, because the grit will give it the drainage, and then we add a bit of seaweed meal. One, for it's a slow release feed, and the other reason is it helps establish root structure on a plant. Root structure is more important than what's on top, in my opinion. So that's why we use seaweed meal. So I'm going to make a little hole down to second knuckle, I reckon. There it is. Now we're just going to prick out some of those seedlings and pop them in a pot. There's my little seedling. You see, nice little root structure. Nice lot of adult leaves. People talk about don't touch the stem of the leaf. I do touch the stem. I rarely lose the plant. It's not like I'm pinching it hard. I'm almost just a tiny little bit of a grip. That's nothing else. So, into the pot, root, and then I am just going to firm that plant in. There it is. All we'll do now is we'll give that a water in. So we'll water once with a nice sprinkle rose on the watering can. You don't want to flood it with water. And then we'll leave it a minute or two, and then we'll come back and we'll give it a second watering. Then what we're going to do with this, it's going to stay outside all winter. So like I say, we're Cornwall, UK. It doesn't matter if we get snow or anything, these will survive. They may die off. The leaves you may lose the leaves, and then come February, the leaves will come back again. So don't panic. You know, these are very cold hardy, and to be honest, these will be ready to be planted into the ground by, in the UK here, I will be planting them in the ground in April of next year. So we are Aquilegia grannies bonnet. How easy they are to grow from seed, from your own seed pods.